Okay, so Parashat Chayei Sarah, as we said, it is the parasha that Sarah dies in, but we call it the life of Sarah to really understand the main really concept and the bottom line that the Torah and the Bible wants to deliver, which is that life never ends. So Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, or the lives of Sarah in Hebrew. And it says that she lived, Sarah's lifetime was 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. So the question in the Talmud is, why is it saying years after each period? 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Why not just say she was 127 years? So that's part of the life cycles that we live. And the Talmud says that she looked like she had the vibrancy in when she was 100 as she was in 20, and she was as beautiful as she was 7 years old. So she never left, she never lost the essence of life. Then she dies, and the first story in the two stories in the parasha, one is that she dies, and the second one is that we find Eliezer, the servant of Abram, finds a shidduch, a partner for Isaac, his wife. So when Sarah dies, it's a very interesting story because now Abraham buys the first real estate in the land. Even though God promised him the land, he still needs to buy it. This is a very important lesson that we don't just if God promises something, or if we have a talent in life, it doesn't mean that we will just be given it on a silver platter. We will have to work for it. We have to earn it. So,
Rabbi,
yes.
the years that Sarah lived, is that our 127, or, is it different? Do we know?
So that's a great question. At this point, probably yes. It is the years that we count. And it's 100 and still they lived a little bit more than what God limited in after Noah. He said, you'll only live 120 years because people are wicked in their heart, and
Mm.
if they live this wicked life, it's better that they just end at 120 and not live like Methuselah almost to 1,000 years, or first Adam lived so long. Um, Also, God limits the life of man after Adam and Eve were exiled from the Garden of Eden, because also to protect us. If we're gonna live corrupt life, which is not gonna be around the tree of life, then we're going to suffer. So if we're going to suffer, God doesn't want us to suffer more than necessary either. So, but when we finally finish the cycle of correction, and we'll come back to God, and there'll be the resurrection of the dead, and we will live in the world to come with no death, no sickness, then we'll live on.
Interesting.
So so this is very important because Abram buys the first real estate that he buys is a burial ground. It's Ma'arat Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. And this is an amazing thing because I was just there on our trip 2 weeks ago, and this is the only building in Israel that is intact for 2,000 years. All the other buildings in Israel are ruins. They were destroyed either by the Romans or later on, and all the, of course, the kingdoms that conquered and destroyed and built and destroyed, and all the wars back and forth. So when you travel in Rome, a lot of times you see buildings and you say, this is where the Colosseum is, or this is where the Pantheon is and has been. And when you go to Israel, unfortunately, for the most part, you say, this is where it used to be. This is where this used to be. And you look at ruins for the most part. But the cave of Machpelah in Hebron is an intact building from the time of Herod. Herod built it the same time as he built expanded the Temple Mount, and you can see, because he has the Herodian stones he has his signature. They're framed and they're perfectly looking, and it was a great building. Terrible person, terrible person, but a very good builder. So he built the building around Ma'arat Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah, and it is still there for 2,000 years. It's really amazing to see. There's something, of course, symbolic that the first place that the Jews bought in the land is still an intact building. And in fact, it is the oldest building in the world.
Wow.
That still serves its original purpose.
It's safe to go there?
As safe as as you can hope to be. Yeah, I mean, the roads are fine. The roads are shared between the Jews, the Israelis, and the Palestinians. And then what happens is there are turns that tell you that you can't turn here because that's area A. So area A is the area that is fully under control of the Palestinian Authority. B is somewhere in between, and C is under the control of Israel. So you can turn everywhere that it says B or C, but A you can. And the way to remember it is area A is like Arafat, B kind of in between, and C is Israel. So so it's safe, and it's actually safer. It's becoming even safer, I would say, with the years, because the Jewish population in Hebron and the Jewish town is expanding. So every time it expands, of course, there's more security, more presence. So I always, when I go there, I try to go there every time I'm in Israel, and I love to do that because when I came one time years ago, and I asked something about where do you get the ticket to go in. I thought, you got to get a ticket, and the guy said to me, "There's no ticket. You're not buying a ticket. You came to visit your grandfather and grandmother.
Wow.
You don't buy a ticket." So it really resonated with me, and so I try to visit our grandparents every time I'm in Israel. It's not the place that tourists go to normally, but I think it's totally worth it. And
Yeah.
we also went to Bethlehem. I try to go to Bethlehem too, even though Bethlehem is Christian at this point, more Muslim now than Christian, but it is thought of as a Christian land, but it's a Jewish story. It's Bethlehem. It's where King David is from. So I try to go there too. So he buys Hebron, and the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. It says the years of Sarah's life. Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abram came to eulogize Sarah and bewail her. Now, if you look at the Hebrew, the word bewail her, livkota, has a small kaf. And the Talmud says two things about these things. The order of the way the word appears, it says he came to eulogize her first, meaning he first acknowledged her beautiful life that she had and the valuable life that she had. He didn't just cry for her first. It's a sign of honoring her, but honoring God that gave us life first. Before we cry for the separation, we have to be happy about the life that we had. So he eulogized her first, and then he bewailed her. And even when he bewailed her, it says the kaf is small because he didn't cry a lot for her, meaning he didn't want to accentuate the loss. He really wanted to emphasize the life. So then Abraham rose up from the presence of his dead and spoke to the children of Het, saying, I am an alien and resident among you. Grant me an estate for a burial site with you, that I may bury my dead from before me. So, first of all, we know that, you need to bury right away. And this is the first burial, the first funeral that we hear about in the Bible. Up until now, and we're talking now about 1,500 years, almost 2,000 years. Sorry, it's 2,000 years after creation. We had Adam, we had 10 generations from Adam to Noah. We had 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. So it's 2,000 years that we're talking about now. And by the way to remember Abraham's birth year from creation is very symbolic. It's 1948. So it's a very interesting and memorable year. So we're talking about, and now of course he was 75. So we're talking about now 2,000 years of creation. The world, because we're counting towards 6,000, right? And the Talmud divides the 6,000 into three parts: creation, then Torah, the 2,000 years of Torah, and then 2,000 years of redemption. So we're in the end time of redemption, really. So
Abraham was 70 when she was 175.
he was 75 when God calls on him to leave his father's house.
And how old was he when Sarah died?
So he was 10 years exactly her senior.
And he's still living. That's interesting.
Yeah, and right. So he was still living. He's not gonna. He died at 175. So he still had another life. At the end of the parasha, it says that he remarried to a woman called Keturah, and the Talmud says, and Rashi quotes it, that it's actually was Hagar. So he remarried Hagar, but the reason now that she's called Keturah is because her deeds she was very pleasant, like the smell of ketoret, the incense. So he whether she was Hagar or another woman, he marries and then he lives with her, and he has 6 more children, and but then he sends them off with gifts and the inheritance goes to Isaac. So Abraham insists now on buying a graveside. So why? What is it about? And there's a whole negotiation between the people. But he tells them, I'm a citizen and an alien among you, resident and alien and resident among you. So this is a very interesting phrase, and it relates to the whole theme here of life and death and everything in between. But what it says here, I am an alien and resident, meaning that a Jewish person, and remember, this is the land that was promised to him. Why should he feel like he was an alien? He should feel like a resident, at least, right? If not the owner of the land. But yet he feels an alien and resident. So this is, the Talmud tells us that a Jew should always feel that way. Meaning, it doesn't matter where we live. We are Americans. We live in America for 12 generations. We lived in Poland for 400 years. We lived in Spain for hundreds of years. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we have to have those two sides. And all a lot of the anti-Semitic rhetoric talks about that, but it's true. We do have an allegiance that is not just for the country that we live in. We do have an allegiance that is beyond that. So he's saying, I'm a resident with you. I live here, but I'm an alien. I'm a Jew. I'm always going to be different. I'm always going to be somebody who is practice something else. So he says, grant me in a state of burial, so I may bury the dead before me. And the children of Chet answered Abraham, saying to him, hear us, my Lord, you are a prince of God in our midst. In the choicest of our burial places, bury your dead. Any of us will not withhold his burial place from you, from burying your dead. Meaning, just do it. You don't have to buy it. Just we'll give it to you as a gift. And Abraham insists that cannot be a gift. Why? Because a gift can be taken back. And if it's not yours, you don't buy it, then later on somebody can say, well, he just buried his dead here, but it's really not. He doesn't own it. And this is the first thing that Abraham owns in the land is a burial ground. So what is it about? And of course, as Jews, we understand that. And what's happening with the hostages in Gaza now, that we care about the bodies of dead hostages for the families who have those bodies in Gaza. They care about them like it was a living person, because we believe that there will be a rise of the dead and that life is eternal. So a burial is just going to sleep. And we have in the Shmoneh Esrei, in the silent prayer, when we say that God fulfill his promise, li shenei afar, to those who died, those who are sleeping in the ground. So we see dead as sleeping in the ground. And he knows that he wants to buy this particular place too, not just any place. And the question is, why is he insisting on that place? And it says, ask if you care about me. And they go back and forth a few times. And he said, if you found, so Abram bowed down before the members of the council, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the members of the council, saying, and I'm in verse 13, rather, if you only would heed me, I give the price of the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. So he wants the Ephron's place, the cave in his property. So the Talmud tells us, why is he insisting on that? Because he knows that Adam and Eve are buried there as well. So Ma'arat Machpelah, the cave of Machpelah in Hebrew, the double Machpelah kefel means double. So we have the double, the couples that are buried there. So starting with Adam and Eve, and then Abram and Sarah, and then Rebecca and Isaac, and then finally Jacob and Leah. Rachel died on the way, and she's buried in Bethlehem, near Bethlehem. So, so these are the four. And when it says Kiryat Arba, Hi Hebron in the beginning, Kiryat Arba is the city of four, and the same Midrash says, what are the four? The four couples that Adam and Eve, Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, and Jacob and Leah. So he wants to bury the dead, and then when he sees that they see that he negotiates back and forth, they give him a price, which was an exorbitant price of 400 shekels, silver shekels. That I don't know exactly what the value is today, but you could probably buy a house in Beverly Hills for that. So then he buries Sarah. And again, so we hear about the first burial in the Bible, 2,000 years of stories, but we never hear how a person was buried. We know they died, but no burial ritual. And of course, for us as Jews, this is the first Jew that died, Sarah, is buried. We value the holy vessel. The body is a holy vessel. It's Kli Kodesh. This is why we bury the Torah. We bury the Torah and we don't burn it or we don't discard of it, because it's a holy vessel. So the body is a holy vessel, so it needs to be buried. Okay, so this is the first story in this parasha, and then we go to the second story right after to hear about the first shidduch, the first matchmaking, also in the Bible. Very interesting, all these new and first stories. And the question is, why didn't we hear about these stories before? Well, because they weren't relevant. The idea of telling the story or creation is in order to tell the story of Israel, that there will be a nation that will come to this world to channel God. Again, we're not just doing it for ourselves. Certain things we do very particular, as eating kosher or celebrating certain things, Shabbat. But our point, we are chosen to channel God into this world, the one God. So that's why this is now, all these stories become very relevant. So then the second, chapter 24, we see about Abraham was old, well on in years, and God and the Lord and Adonai had blessed Abraham with everything. It says he blessed him bakol, in everything. And Abram said to his servant, the elder of his household, who controls all that is his, which tells us that any successful person needs to have a good manager. You can't do things on your own, especially when Sarah dies, of course. The Balabusta, And so now you need help. So now he said, place your hand under my thigh, and I will have you swear by Adonai, God of heaven and God of earth, that you not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. Rather, to my land and to my kindred shall you go to take a wife of my son, for my son, for Isaac. So the question that the Talmud is asking is, what's the difference? What's the difference? These are idol worshippers, and those are idol worshippers. What difference does it make if he marries somebody from here or there? And this is where an amazing teaching comes. And it says, because the fact that they are still idol worshippers is one thing, but they are kind people. Of course, not everybody's kind, and we'll see that some of the family members are not kind, but as a society, as a culture, there are a kind culture. The Canaanites were not, just like Sodom and Gomorrah that we heard about, and they were corrupt, and they were what they lacked, what Abraham was looking for. And what was Abraham looking for his son, for Isaac? If before we even read about it, think about it. You're looking for a spouse, you're looking to build a home with somebody. The Sodom and Gomorrah were just destroyed. Why were they destroyed? Because they were wicked. How wicked? In what way were they wicked? They were not charitable. And there's stories about Sodom and Gomorrah, how they were they tortured anybody who tried to be charitable towards the poor, because they didn't want to share their wealth. So that's why they were destroyed. So when you're now looking for somebody, you're looking for someone who's charitable. Think about it. Do you want to marry the smartest person? Well, very nice if they are the smartest person. The wealthiest person? Yes, it's nice if they're very wealthy. Pretty, of course. Healthy. You want all those in a person, absolutely. But if a person has all those characteristics and all those virtues, but they're not kind, they're not charitable, your life is going to be miserable. So this is what he's looking for. He's looking for someone like Sarah, someone like him, that they were welcoming into their tent. So he sends he tells his servant to put his hand under the thigh. So the Talmud says this is a clean language to say he held his bris, because bris means that the brit was the covenant, and that was what Abram just went through. This was the ultimate act of again, he also, of course, put Isaac on the altar, but the circumcision was the first act of saying, I've crossed the line into something else, into Judaism, and became the Jewish sign and the covenant, the sign of the covenant. So see, he says, hold that and swear to me that you're not going to, that you're going to find a wife for my son in the land that I came from. So the servant said to him, perhaps the woman shall not wish to follow me to this land. Shall I take your son back to the land which you departed? And Abraham answered him, beware not to return my son to there. And then the Lord God of heaven, who look for me from the house of my father, took me from the house of my father and from the land of my birth, who spoke concerning me, and who swore to me, saying, to your offspring will I give this land, he will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman will not wish to follow you, you shall be absolved of this oath of mine. However, do not return my son to there. Okay, so he's very clear about staying in the land, and even if it means not to find or not to bring a wife to Isaac. It's interesting because the halacha today, the law is that you can leave the land for three reasons. Three reasons are a good enough reasons, because to leave the land of Israel is of course a big deal, and it's called yerida, to descend, to descend in holiness. And it says that if you put all the commandments of the Torah on one side of the scale and living in Israel on the other, they will be equal. So living in the land is so important because you embody, it's like dwelling in the sukkah. Just by sitting in the sukkah, you're fulfilling a commandment. So leaving the land is a big deal, and you shouldn't do it just for anything. But there's three reasons that you can leave the land. One is to study Torah. The second, meaning if there's a yeshiva or something that, in somewhere, and let's say the land doesn't have the same capacity, you can move and to a yeshiva outside of Israel. The second is for livelihood. If you can't find livelihood in the land, and you can go somewhere else, like they went to Egypt many times to find livelihood, you can do it. And the third one is to find a match. So is to marry. So that's another reason. So it's interesting that Abraham is here he puts the land under a higher on a higher level. Okay, so then the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him regarding this matter. And then the servant took 10 camels of his master's camels, as set out with all the bounty of his master in the land, to make way to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. Okay, so Nahor is Abraham's brother, and so he goes to Abraham's land. Now, what's the significance of taking camels, and also 10 camels? It doesn't have. Does the Torah really have to tell us how many camels he took, or that he took camels? Why not donkeys? Or why does it even matter how he traveled? So clearly, there's a very important important detail here. So a camel in Hebrew is gamal, and the word gamal is the same word as kindness, gmilut chasadim. It says that in the ethics of our fathers, in the Mishnah, it says that the world stands on three things: on Torah, on avodah. Avodah means the service of God in many ways, tefillah, prayer, but also, of course, fulfilling the commandment. And then the third one is gmilut chasadim, kindness, because the outcome, if it starts with Torah and then mitzvot, the outcome of all this has to be that you result in being a mensch. If you're not a mensch, it means that it's not working. And God destroyed the world in Noah's time because people were not mensch. They were wicked, and then of course Sodom and Gomorrah. So God, bottom line, wants us to be nice people, which is not very hard to understand. So he says, I will take the camels, and he says, the Adonai, God of my master Abraham, may you so arrange it for me this day that you do kindness with my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the townsmen come out to draw water. Let it be that the maiden to whom I shall say, please tip over your jug so I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will even water your camels, her will you have designated for your servant, for Isaac, and I may know through her that you have done kindness with my master. Wow. So that's the indication if a woman is kind and generous, and that's what he was aiming for. And of course, that's what happened. And and it was when he had not yet finished speaking that suddenly Rebecca was coming out. So two things about that. Suddenly, that it came right as before he finished speaking. So it says that why is this very important? Because it says that God has special relationship with righteous people. And what is the special relationship? How do you know if someone is righteous or not? Now, it doesn't mean that God will overlook what a righteous person does, or if they make a mistake. But it says that with righteous people, God acts immediately, swiftly. He doesn't wait. So if you did something good, you get it right then, a reward. And if you did something bad, you get the reward right away. Something about you knowing and making the reference that it was right then and then, that is your reward for being a righteous person. And that's very, very interesting. So she appeared suddenly. The other thing about Rebecca appearing is a big question here. Why is Rebecca appearing? Why is she by the well? She's a princess. Her family is very wealthy. They can send the servants to fetch water. Why is she at the well? So the Midrash had to explain that. And it explains it by saying that she herself had a vision that she needed to go there that day. And then she went there. So usually she was not the one going to fetch water. It really was that day that God brought her there. And that actually makes more sense to me than having her go and draw the water for the whole family.
And it seems, were they distantly related?
Yes, they are related, and they find out afterward that they're related, because he asks her, Bat mi'at, who are you a daughter of? And it's one of the precious questions, because I had an experience in my life. We grew up in the city. I grew up in Rehovot, the next town over here. And in the city, it wasn't a big metropolitan, but it was still a city of, at least when I was growing up, about 80,000 people. So clearly it's a city. You don't know everybody, and it acts like a city. So nobody's going to ask you on the street, who are you? Or, ask you a question. But then when I was in, just before finishing high school, we moved to a small neighborhood outside the city. and we built a house and we moved, and they were all Yemenites. It's where my mother's family came to when they came to Israel. So 3,000 people, everybody knows each other for 3,000 years. So they just kind of relocated from Yemen to the neighborhood, Akron, like Akron, Ohio. So one of my first experiences there, when I was going to the bus station to take the bus to school, and on the way, I guess this woman saw me now for a couple of weeks there, and she never saw me before, and they all know each other. So one day she stops me, and she asks me exactly this question: Ben mi ata? The son of who are you? It was amazing to then see how biblical it was.
Yeah.
So we know the story of Rebecca, that she gave him also water to his camels, and then he's so impressed, and she said, "Drink, my lord," and quickly she lowered her jug to her hand and gave him to drink. When she finished giving him the drink, she said, "I will draw water even for your camels until they finish drinking." So it means that she was so generous until they finished drinking. She didn't just give a little bit; she gave all of it. And in the 8 levels of charity that Maimonides, that Rambam grades, he says that when somebody asks you for something, you can give the lowest level is to give begrudgingly and not enough, and to give enough but also without a full heart, and then to give enough, so, and then to give, of course, more than you were asked. So she is on that level of charity. She's ranked very high because she's not just giving. When he asked her to drink, she didn't say, "Okay, here, here's a little bit," or, "Here, I'll leave it here for you." She gives herself. She gives everything until they will be satisfied, until he finished giving him. It doesn't say she gave him to drink, until when she finished giving him to drink. And then she said, "I will give your camel until they have finished drinking." That's the level of charity she has. And then, so she hurried, right? Like Abraham, we hear about Abraham always hurrying to when the angels or his guests came. It was he hurried to give them food and to welcome them. So then she said, "I will draw water even for your camel until they have finished drinking." So she hurried and emptied her jug into a trough, and kept running back and forth until they were all satisfied. And the Lord has made, so the man was astonished at her, reflecting silently to know whether Adonai had made his journey successful or not. And it was, when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a golden nose ring. Its weight was a beka. I don't know how much you can put on the nose, but it was clearly a sign of that it was very precious and expensive. And 2 bracelets on her arms. 10 gold shekels was their weight. My goodness. And she said, "Whose daughter?" And he said, "Whose daughter are you?" And that's this amazing question. And pray tell me, and is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? So he's pushing the envelope, I would say, even further. right? Can we spend the night? To see how gracious she would be. She said to him, I am the daughter of Betuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. So what does that mean? She is Nahor's granddaughter. Nahor was Abraham's brother. So she is Isaac's first cousin once removed, because she's the daughter of his cousin, of Betuel. Betuel was his cousin. And then she said to him, even straw and feed are plentiful with us, as well as place to lodge. Unbelievable. And the Talmud says she was a girl. She was a little girl. They don't know exactly, but some say she was 4 years old. And very young. So to be this beautiful soul, beautiful heart. So the man bowed low and prostrated himself to the Hashem, and he said, "Blessed is Hashem, God of my master Abraham, who was not withheld his kindness and truth from my master." So that was his sign, and that's exactly the thought he had beforehand. Someone who he would ask for a little bit, and that would give him a lot. So then he goes to her parents' house and tell them the story, and we would just skip now to verse 42 in chapter 24, where he tells the story to her family. And again, this story is so significant. Why do we know that it's so significant? Why? Because it repeats itself 3 times. The only thing that repeats itself 3 times in the Bible, in the Torah, is the story of building the Mishkan, the tent of meeting in the temple in the desert, when God commanded Moses to build it with the details, then what Moses conveyed to the people, and then what they actually did. So 3 times, and it has about 300 verses, but it repeats itself 3 times. Here, it repeats itself 3 times because in a sense, it is building a home too, building the house of God, a Bait Ne'eman, right? A loyal house in Israel. So it's the same idea as building the house of marriage between God and Israel. It's building the house of marriage for the couple. So one time it says when it's described when Eliezer speaks to God about this and said, I wish that I will have a scenario when I will meet this girl and I'll ask her and she'll give me more. That's one. Then what actually happens, and then the third time when he conveys it to her family. So this is an incredible a story that has to be repeated. So he says to them, I came today to the spring to say, the Lord of my master Abraham, if you would graciously make successful my way on which I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let it be that the young woman who comes to draw the water, and so forth. So he tells them the story. One thing that he tells them the story differently is when Abraham sends him, he says, go to my land and to where I am. But there's no mention of find a wife from my family. But here, when the servant tells the family the story, he says that he was commanded to find a wife from his from his master's family. And that's a difference. Whether he does it to impress them more, convince them more, to highlight how miraculous this was, but he changes a little bit of the story. And then in verse 50, we'll kind of skip through. It says, then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, so Lavan and Bethuel, it's interesting that it mentions Lavan first and not Bethuel. Bethuel is the father and Lavan is the son. But it seemed like Lavan was the leader there and making the decisions. And the Torah says that the Talmud really describes Bethuel as a wicked man. It wasn't a nice person. And we know that Lavan was not a nice person, because later on Jacob, right, comes to him to work for him, and he cheats him in many times. So they are shrewd business people, and they of course see the opportunity. Of course, they understand that this man is a wealthy man. He comes with all these camels, and he already gave all these jewelries to their daughter and sister. So then Laban and Bethuel answered to him and said, the matter stemmed from Hashem. We can say to you neither bad nor good. So he convinced them that this was supposed to happen. This was Besher. Right? As we say, this Besher. So that's what they said. It says here, here's Rebecca is before you. Take her and go, and let her be a wife to your master's son. And the Lord has, as the Lord has spoken, as Adonai has spoken. And it was when Abraham's servant heard their words, he prostrated himself to the ground to the Lord. The servant brought out objects of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah, and delicious fruits he gave to her brother and to her mother. Okay, so he needed to kind of cushion the everybody. You would think I'm in New York City with this ambulance behind me. So he gave them all this we call it nedunya. The nedunya. This is the when you give what's the word when you give someone the what's the word in English? When you give someone when the man buys
A dowry.
a dowry. Thank you. So that's the dowry. And actually, even in my parents' case, even though my parents are cousin, my parents are also first cousin. My father had to buy my mother, so he paid her family money to that they were biblical. They did everything by biblical standards. So he gave her mohar, the mohar. So okay, so he gives her the dowry. Then they call Rebecca, but then they pull another trick on him. Before it seemed like it was settled, right? But then they went to sleep, and in the morning, so they ate and drank, and the men who were with him, and they spent the night. When they arose next morning, he said, "Send me to my master." And then her brother and mother said, it's interesting, the father is not in the picture now. It's the brother, it's the mother. She said, "Let the maiden remain with us a year or 10 months. Then she will go. Somehow to delay this. Now it was a done deal. What are they trying to do? They're trying to, according to the Talmud, to get more out of this deal, to negotiate, to say it's not a done deal. What else can you for him to pressure him? And he said to them, "Do not delay me now, that the Lord has made my journey successful. Send me, I will go to my master." And they said, "Let us call the maiden and ask her decision." Okay? אפשר רגע בבקשה? אני מקליט פשוט. They said that they will be they'll ask the girl, right? So this is now, because we're now talking about the first shidduch ever, this is actually the law. The Jewish law is that you cannot marry someone off without her consent. Even in the ultra-Orthodox communities, they have to ask if the girl doesn't want to get married, then you can't force her. It's not a forced marriage. It's arranged, but it's not forced. So that's a very important thing. They're doing it maybe to hope in hopes that she may say, I'm too young, I want to stay home for another, and then they will be part of that too, because as long as she's with them, he takes care of them too. He gives them gifts, right? So this is what the commentators, this is the direction that they're going with that. So, okay. And then they asked her, they called Rebecca and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will go." So she had no doubt. She wanted to go. She recognized something as the servant of Abraham, a recognized kindness. She also recognized kindness. And the Talmud says she knew that her household is wicked, that they're not honest people. So she wanted out of there too. So she said, "I will go." And then they blessed Rebecca and said to her, and this is a beautiful, beautiful blessing, one of the most beautiful blessings in the Torah. It says, I'll read it in Hebrew first because it's so beautiful. They said, "Achotenu at hayi le'alfei revava ve'yirash zar'ech et sha'ar son'av." It's a very short blessing, but it says a lot. It says everything. It says, "Our sister, may you come to be thousands of myriads, and may your offspring inherit the gate of its foes." So it's a blessing. It's a double blessing here, that you will increase, but they also are saying something within this blessing. What are they saying? They're saying, we know that you will have foes. You will have challenges. You will have people who will challenge your blessing. So the other blessing is for you is to overcome that may you offering inherit the gate of its foes. And then the Rebecca arose with her maiden. They rode upon the camels and proceeded after the man. And then they went. And then now Isaac came from having gone to Be'er Lachai Roi, for he dwelt south in the south country. It said that he was praying he was praying mincha, because it was it says Isaac went out to supplicate in the field towards evening, and he raised his eyes and he saw, and behold, camels were coming. So we say that the Abraham always rose in the morning. The stories about Abraham is always in the morning. So he's the shachrit. He is referring to the prayer of the morning prayer. Isaac was the mincha in the before evening, and Jacob, his stories always happen at night. So he's the evening service prayer. And then he saw Rebecca, and Rebecca raised her eyes and saw Isaac. She inclined while upon the camel, and she said to the servant, "Who is then this man walking in the field toward us?" And he said, the servant said, "He is my master." So she understood that this is her shidduch and her future husband. And she took the veil and covered herself. And then the servant told Isaac the things that happened. And Isaac, this is the last part of it. And Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother. He married Rebekah. She became his wife, and he loved her. And thus was Isaac consoled after his mother. So that's the full story of the next chapter. Just tells us about Abram's marriage to Keturah. We're not going to go there, but but this is a full story of Sarah dying, and then the next generation coming through. And it's the important thing about it is that we know there's a cycle of life, that after every death comes life, every of destruction comes rebuilding, and that Sarah herself buried in a place that she would rise one day. And the most important characteristics of the continuity is the kindness. That's what the Jewish home is based upon. About when we say Beit Ne'eman, a loyal household, we refer to the fact that it would be a kind and welcoming household. Okay.